Welcome to Spirits Podcast, a boozy dive into mythology, legends, and folklore. Every week we pour a drink and learn about a new story from around the world. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Julia.
And this is episode 116, La Llorona with Elena Fernández-Collins.
I am very excited. Ellie is a good friend of ours and is also very knowledgeable, and it was wonderful to have her on the show.
This was one of my favorites to record, and we are so excited to share it with you, the listeners.
Yes. So, speaking of our listeners, we have some new patrons this week.
Yay! Thank you, and welcome to Mark, Brett, Desmond, Perry, Jessica, Hannah, Aina, and Ida Maria. And thank you, as always, to the supporting and legend-level producers whose names we know so well. Philip, Julie, Eeyore, Kathy, Vinny, Danica, Marissa, Sammy, Josie, Neil, Jessica, Phil Fresh, and Deborah on the supporting producer side. And those legends, you know them, we know them, everyone loves them. Ayla, Jess, Sarah, Zoe, Sandra, Audra, Mercedes, Jack Marie, and Leanne.
We know that if y'all ran into La Llorona, she would not bother you.
100%.
That's how cool you are.
Totally. And Julia, tell us, what were we drinking this episode?
Did you know that there is actually a La Llorona cocktail, Amanda?
I did not, because you tell me what I'm drinking after I drink it, which I don't recommend with anybody except your BFF.
I've been mixing cocktails for as long as Amanda and I could legally drink. Wink.
Mom and Dad.
And so I definitely she has learned to trust me with my cocktail mixing abilities. This one is made with pisco. It is delicious. It is bitter. And if you are one of our patrons at the recipe card tier, you're going to get a copy of that in your inbox.
Beautiful. And actually, speaking of delicious cocktails, my recommendation for the week, Julia, is canned limoncello margaritas.
Okay. Interesting choice. Tell me more.
Yes, that is a real thing. We were actually fortunate enough to get sent some, which, like, this is my literal dream, is to have alcohol companies be like, hey, here is some booze for you to enjoy. And I'm like, thank you. So Fabrizia Limoncello is the company that reached out. They sent us a box of their margaritas. They have like margarita mix that you can just pour out of the bottle, and also these really adorable, convenient little cans. And every time I see like a bad limerita at a supermarket, I'm like, ugh, who would do this? But then I'm able to put a limoncello margarita in my purse in just a can, and I'm like, me. I would do it, but it tastes really good, and we thank them for reaching out. So that's my recommendation for the week.
So you saved me one for when I come over next,
right?
Oh,
I saved you 3. Also this week, I would love to recommend and thank our 2 sponsors. There's Skillshare, where Skillshare.com/spirits2 will get you 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free, and Zola, where you can get your free wedding website and $50 off your registry at Zola, ZOLA.com/spirits.
At the time of recording this, we are leaving for this week to go to Portland for the Listen Up Festival. If you're going to be there, we are excited to see you. If not, sorry, the tickets are sold out, but we are excited to put on another great show in like basically the same 30-day period that we put on 3 other live shows. I'm very excited.
You know, we're starting off the year with a bang, and we definitely have more shows in store for 2019. Like, we'll be able to announce them at some point in the next month or so. So the best way to stay up to date on everything creepy, cool, and Multitude is to go to multitude.productions and sign up for our mailing list.
You should do it. Amanda puts a lot of effort into making it very, very cute, and it's so purple, and she's wonderful, and the newsletter is wonderful.
Thanks. I do my best. But let's not keep the listeners any longer from this excellent episode. So y'all enjoy episode 116, La Llorona with Elena Fernández-Collins.
Listeners, welcome. A lot of you, I'm going to say, a couple months ago at this point, sent us a trailer for a movie. And the movie, it looked real bad. It looked real bad, guys. I'm not going to lie.
It was about mythology, so I understand why they sent it to us.
I get it.
We were both like, oh no.
But we saw it and we're like, wow, that's a lot of white people for a Mexican folklore story. So I was like, we should do that. We should do an episode on that. I'm like, I am also a white woman, so I probably don't want to do that myself. So today we've invited Elena Fernández-Collins on the show. She is a podcast critic and journalist. Ellie, welcome.
Hello, thank you
for
having
good friends.
me.
Hello.
Our good friend. Ellie, how are you doing today? How are you for the listeners? Do you have a drink in hand? Are you feeling good?
It's way too early over here for me to be drinking.
Slander. Blasphemy.
It's afternoon there. It's okay.
It is 5:00 the somewhere where I am. Therefore, it's okay.
Therefore, it's fine. I have water.
That is good.
Bold choice.
Yeah,
Stay hydrated.
I know.
So, Ellie, you're going to talk to us about La Llorona, correct?
I am.
And is that a story that you grew up with?
Yeah, it is. So I grew up in Puerto Rico. I was born there. I lived there for 18 years. My parents still live there. I should note, my mother is white. I am not Afro-Latinx. I pass as a white person, so I have that privilege that I'm coming from as well. Mm-hmm. But I did grow up with La Llorona, both in my household in a way, but mostly in my community and with my friends.
I hope not literally in your household.
You know?
I'm just saying, hopefully, from what I've heard, maybe not that.
Not in my house. I wouldn't be here if it had been in my house.
That is true.
I know nothing, as is usual for our recordings. So I'm very excited to hear what this myth is about. I've only ever seen it, like Julia said, recommended to us on Twitter, where I was like, oh, it seems scary, but also a reduction of what it probably actually is. So I would love to just get the bones of the story from you.
Yeah, we can do that. So La Llorona is a Latin American myth, right? It's not just from Puerto Rico, right? It's as is obvious in the trailer, it's also found very heavily in Mexico, across many islands in the Caribbean, and some other parts of Latin America. The basic part of the story is that there is this indigenous woman. It's from Spanish colonizer times, of course.
Mm-hmm. Aren't they all?
Aren't they all? And there's this indigenous woman who falls in love with a Spaniard. They have children together. Whether or not they're married is a variant in the story, but they have children together. And whether or not he's in love with her is also a variant in the story.
Mm. Would it really be a good story if the man wasn't potentially unfaithful?
Pretty much. And so, they have kids together, and the number of kids also varies a ton.
You know what? This makes me think it's probably more likely to be an actual story, because someone was like, no, I heard there were 7 kids. No, I heard there were 3. And that just makes me think that there is something real, and it's not just like making it up.
You are very intelligent, because there is, and I will get to that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Amazing. We really don't plan these, guys. I just sweep in, and sometimes my predictions are right. Hashtag Ludo Bagman.
Amanda is just very insightful all of the time, and it's kind of ridiculous. And sometimes it ruins
Ludo Bagman.
It ruins my moments, but it's fine.
It's fine. And so they have kids together, and then he abandons her, either because he has fallen out of love with her, or because he was never in love with her in the first place, and she wants to get married, and he laughs in her face. Or sometimes it's because he's worried about what marrying her is going to mean for him socially, and he abandons her. And she goes mad with grief when she finds out that he has decided to marry a high-class Spanish noblewoman. And she drowns her children.
I mean, not my first reaction to that kind of thing, but understandable.
Exactly. She drowns her children, and she realizes what she's done after they're dead, and then she commits suicide also in the same river. I think probably my favorite version of this story when I was growing up was the one where she sees them in a carriage going by, like, on the street, and she, like, goes insane in, like, 5 seconds and throws her children into the river.
Just tosses them, just eats them, just straight up eats them. Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
That's how it's described, is that she throws them into the river and then throws herself in after them. She's killed her children, killed herself, and now she wanders that section of wherever it is that she has supposedly died, wailing, crying for her lost children. The Catholic version of this story, there's a lot of versions of this story.
I'm very excited for the Catholic version. Go on.
The Catholic version of this story has a little coda. And the coda says that when she dies, she goes to the gates of heaven, but whoever it is that's guarding heaven, I've forgotten the name, I'm not Catholic.
St. Peter, I think.
Says that is, like, horrified by what she's done, and says that she can't come in until all of her family, i.e. her children, are present with her.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so she has to wander the earth. In this case, it's, like, usually, like, the earth or whatever, looking for her children. And sometimes she steals children who look like hers, who are not hers, right? And she kills them.
I mean, that's an interesting method.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I always thought that was kind of bonkers.
It is very Catholic. Let's be real here.
So
very Catholic.
It's very Catholic. Probably also like one of the other very Catholic addendums to the story is that sometimes her name is Maria, which is
why not?
A Spanish white person name.
Yeah.
And so when I was growing up, when I was really little, this was the basic story, right? It was an indigenous woman and a Spanish colonizer, and he causes her to go mad with grief and kill her children and do this horrible thing. When I was in high school, in like 2004, I guess-ish, it became this like really big thing again in my town. Everybody started talking about it again. And it took on this new form called La Llorona de Lajas. So Lajas is a town in PR. And supposedly there had been sightings of a like crying woman wandering this bridge in Lajas. People's parents started warning their children against wandering at night. We were like teenagers. We were like 14 or 15. And I had other people's parents tell me to not wander the streets at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, all teens love to do is wander the streets at night, in fairness.
That is
exactly.
true.
That's just all we do all day long.
It's a universal truth.
My parents' version of that was not to hang out in front of the Dunkin' Donuts, because apparently that's where all the vagrants in North America hang out.
Oh, God.
We also, sorry to disrupt.
No, you're fine.
We also had the Gilgo murders, like when we were in high
that's
school.
true.
That is true.
Yeah, they happened in high school, and then when they were discovered in college, where they were suddenly like, hey, there's like many people's remains in your public beach. And we were like, oh. So, yeah, they should have been focusing more on the unlit, isolated state parks and less in the Dunkin' Donuts.
Wow. That's okay.
I feel like everyone has a really traumatic story from high school about a potential murder that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that just like how small towns are?
Yeah, pretty much.
So in Lajas, was there like an implication that there was danger, or just that there was like this person being, like grieving in public, and that was just like uncomfortable?
There was like an implication of danger.
Right.
And what was really interesting about La Llorona de Lajas was that the story changed. Suddenly, there was this story going around about a woman who had died in a car accident on that bridge in the 90s.
Ooh.
Oh.
And either she was young and she was crying for her parents, or she was older and she was crying for her children and stealing away children. And if she was a child, then she was stealing children so that they could be friends with her.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Hey, here's my tea party.
Yep.
By the way, you're dead now.
Oh, it's just Hill House is what you just described.
Yeah, pretty much. And so that was I didn't actually remember that until after you were looking for people to talk about La Llorona, and I was like, oh, right, there was that weird time when suddenly she was like from the 90s and died in a horrible car accident.
I wonder why the crime had to be so old. I guess because, as we've discussed, like fresh ghosts aren't as scary.
They aren't, yeah.
So, I mean, did that seem plausible? Were people just kind of like, oh, this is creepy, I don't want to touch it?
Yeah, pretty much. They were like, oh, this is creepy, we don't want to look at it. And then sometime in 2012, so this is after I left the island, so I'm a little bit hazier on this part, but apparently there were some people that were actually faking the ghost appearance of La Llorona de Lajas.
Oh, like dressing up.
And they got discovered by a group of ghost hunters.
Yes. Coming through Zach Bagans.
Oh, so good.
Some kind of local group of ghost hunters that I've never heard of, but this apparently happened.
This put them on the map.
And now they call it El Fraude de la Llorona. The fraud of La Llorona.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
It's
I mean, like, it's kind of crappy for someone to pretend to be a ghost and whatnot.
Sure.
And it kind of reminds me of the, like, 2016 clown, like, thing that was happening. The creepy clown thing. I really do like people perpetuating a myth in that kind of way, even if it seems like more physical and tactical, even if it is fake.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I think, and this is the part that I'm very hazy on, I think that the people who were faking it were also another group of ghost hunters.
That's a little worse.
We need details.
Like, wait. Really?
Immediately.
So either it was just some local group of like kids, or it was a group of like amateur ghost hunters or something. But in any case, there was like this fraud that was uncovered about La Llorona de Lajas. And it apparently caused a lot of people to get really angry, which I understand. Don't fake pretend that you're a ghost, people.
Yeah.
Just in general. Like, maybe
don't. Like, parents are already so worried about teenagers all the time. So giving them more to worry about and then being like, lol, I'm a kid, and then a ghost hunter is here and for once has discovered something. That's just like a lot is happening right now.
Yeah, it's really shitty.
Julia, I am now a full-time business owner and runner, and it's lovely. Also, really hard. And there's a lot that I didn't know I needed to do. And one of those is, even though we have a gorgeous logo, we have a great name, I'm super happy with everything that you see when you go to multitude.productions. There's a lot about branding and talking about your company that I didn't really realize was a thing. So this week on Skillshare, our sponsor for the week, I looked at this class called The Staples of Branding From Purpose to Product with Jeff Staple, which I think is hilarious because it's a pun.
Very good.
And there's just a lot of discussion about like taking a thought about a company and making it into an actual thing, whether it's a product or something like, a whole company. And I really appreciated it. Even though we're already out there, it helped me to kind of rethink and refocus on what it is that you have to think about when you make something that the rest of the world sees. So I highly recommend that you go to Skillshare.com/spirits2 and sign up for a 2-month-long free trial of Skillshare Premium.
Yeah, Skillshare has over 25,000 classes in stuff like design, business, and more. And so you discover countless ways to fuel your curiosity, creativity, and career. Like Amanda's saying, she is now running a business. She's a full-time business owner, and she is crushing it. But you could be crushing it more by taking a couple classes with Skillshare.
Totally. Got to keep that continuing ed requirement, not a requirement, but a thing that I still think is really important. And there's nowhere better online to do it than Skillshare, which is the best online learning community for creators.
And like we said, you can go to Skillshare.com/spirits2 to get 2 months free trial with their premium membership.
That's in the link of the episode description. And again, Skillshare.com/spirits2.
Amanda, I'm still in the process of planning a wedding.
Yep.
And you know what has made it so much easier?
What?
I started using Zola. Zola is a wedding company that, as they say, will do anything for love. And they are reinventing the wedding planning and registry experience to make the happiest moments in a couple's lives so much easier. Wedding planning is stressful. I'm not going to tell you that it's not, but Zola makes it so much easier. Over 500,000 couples have used Zola or are using it now. They help you make a free wedding website. They help you create your dream wedding registry, and they have these affordable save the dates and invitations. They have easy to use planning tools. Everything is all in one place, so I don't have to go to a million websites trying to figure out how to put my wedding together. Zola's got me covered there.
And, I recently saw a wedding that I was invited to had a Zola website, and they had an FAQ there. So it answered questions like, wait, what does this dress code actually mean? And like, where should I stay? Which was really, really useful because there are so many details to think of. And I personally appreciate that Zola has same-sex couples on their subway ads, which I just think is really nice.
Hey, thanks, Zola. Thanks for that. The nice part is, too, when you are creating your Zola website, they have over 100 different website designs to choose from. So you can find the right design for you, Sometimes it's really, really hard to find something that matches exactly your aesthetic, but Zola makes it really easy with a bunch of different designs to choose from.
That's awesome. And when you do make your registry, you can choose actual products, or you can create a fund for your honeymoon, your future home, kids, or new pets, really anything you want, which I think is really sweet. I contributed to somebody's Zola registry and put in my comments, please buy an elaborate brunch with this money. And I hear that it went very well.
You can register with anyone from Cuisinart to Airbnb, or people can buy you gift cards to Delta or Hulu or Home Depot, which I want a Home Depot one real bad.
That's really exciting. Well, if you want to start your free wedding website and get $50 off your registry, go to zola.com/spirits. That's ZOLA.com/spirits. ZOLA.com/spirits, and you can get your free wedding website and get $50 off your registry on Zola. Thanks, Zola. Now let's get back to the show.
So I mentioned earlier that you were right about the implication that there's some sort of real part to this.
Mm-hmm.
/ I'm sorry, because it's very tragic.
Yeah, it is going to get tragic up in here.
It's Fierce Podcast.
There was this real historical figure, a woman who has many names at this point. This has some association, though not necessarily origin, in Mexico. There's this Nahua woman that's a indigenous group to Mexico and her name was Malinayi. She's also called La Malinche. And she was a Nahua interpreter for Hernan Cortés.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so she ended up having a child with Hernan Cortés.
Probably not by choice, but moving on from that.
Yeah. Man, all of this is so wrapped up in those power dynamics and colonization and
exactly.
Oof.
She was a slave. There was like a huge like sex slavery, like trafficking in that time between those people. And unfortunately, because there's also massive quantities of patriarchy everywhere you turn, she became a figure of betrayal. There's actually a term in Spanish, malinchista, which means someone who has betrayed their culture in favor of foreign expressions. Yeah, it's really loaded.
So like not only did she probably get raped by Cortez, she got turned on by her own people as well. Ouch.
Right.
That is a lot.
So the thing is, like, she was like an interpreter, and she supposedly, I'm hazy on like which parts of the history are like confirmed and which ones are not, but she like knew of some attack plans that her people were going to be ambushing Cortés, and then she told Cortés that they were happening. But the thing is, like, there's like a huge power dynamic there that, or even if that happens, she was probably
she could be like afraid for her life. Right.
Yeah. Oof.
That's and at the same time, like, I understand that you like it's almost easier to believe that one person could change loyalty than to sort of like reckon with the massive shift in like situation that your people, your nation is facing. You know what I mean? Like it's just so much more to contemplate that, like, well, this is a situation we're all in now fighting together, than to say, oh, well, this one person made a bad choice and that is, you know, an isolated incident.
Right, exactly. You're completely right. I mean, the history of Malinayi, and I'm not going to call her La Malinche because I don't want to use that word. Her history is like super tangled up in all of this colonizer effect, right? There's this perception of like what she did and why that was wrong, and she's not a victim ever. There was actually a statue of her and I think her children in a like student campus in Mexico City. I'm not sure about that one. And it got pulled down.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Wow, that seems so loaded. Just like the cultural significance of it and the history behind it is so loaded. And the fact that you like you said, it's kind of hard to tell what is fact and what is fiction. And that like level of legend in it is probably so divisive if you're looking at it from a scholarly perspective. Yeah.
There's been a lot of scholarship on her. I don't have any kind of specialization in Mexican history, so this is the barest bones of what I know. But what I do know is that there's an associated legend, and I'm almost 100% sure that it is legend, that she at some point killed the kid that she had with Cortés. And that's how she gets associated with La Llorona. And some people mark her as some kind of origin point because of that whole betrayal aspect, you know, because this other legendary figure, La Llorona, betrays her family because she goes mad with grief. And so there's that association. And it's just real rough.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because if you're looking at like kind of just the patriarchal elements of the story, like the worst thing in this story in particular, the worst thing you could possibly do that as a mother is to kill your children. And so like this story is so loaded with that kind of guilt and that societal guilt. It's like as a woman, the worst thing she could do is give birth to a person and then kill them. And it's so, and there's plenty of other stories in other cultures that have that, but it feels like so much more when you kind of load it with the history that white people have with Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it all the much more worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
And like
much.
it's a fiction that under colonialism or imperialism anyone has agency. Like it's a system, forced onto someone else, and you want to feel like you have agency, you can make choices, you can determine your own history within it. But these retelling of these women's stories make it seem as if they like make a bad choice when in fact like options were taken away from them, and then they're just like left there to deal. So it's I see all of the threads that form this tapestry, but it's still a fucked up tapestry.
It is. I also like noticed how these stories end up going towards the women are crazy
Right.
fiction. The women can't be in control of their emotions fiction. It's just used a lot here. And the other way that I see this is La Llorona is a really popular myth to capitalize on in advertising.
Really?
Really?
Yes, there is a Got Milk ad with La Llorona. Yes.
What?
Oh.
That's horrifying.
Yep.
Please tell me more.
It's a house, and there's this crying woman in a bridal gown walking through the house, and she's a ghost. She's like semi-transparent. So she's crying and wandering the house and like hysterical, and then she opens the fridge and finds the milk and is like,
Oh my God.
yeah, it's and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like that is not the end of ads that I have seen with her.
That is the most capitalist, hetero, patriarchal thing I have literally ever heard. It's like this whole like structure says or implies to women that the best way to survive is to be accepting and to accept the like rules and whims and structures of the men, whether it's your father and then your husband, the government, whatever, puts in front of you. Because if you rebel too much, or if you are, I don't know, if you exist and your husband decides to leave you, then the only logical reaction, which is to be devastated or to have this like seismic shift of your world changing, even if there wasn't love present, it's still like you're in a whole different scenario socially, you've been stigmatized, whatever. And to react in the same volume that matches the stuff that was done to you is labeled as crazy, like you point out, Elena. And anything, and like the myth wants you to be like, okay, I'll go on, and just to like, I don't know, it just wants women to be obedient and quiet and not to be public with their like grief or anger. And that's why like the idea of a woman like, or an apparition, whatever, crying in public in a bridge, it's like there's a lot to cry about in the world, and if any of us stop and think about it for a minute, like don't you get it? And that's just like, that's destabilizing or something in a way that I understand why parents would be like no, and try to like close the door on it.
Yeah, pretty much. You're dead on. Like and I'm gonna like show that you're dead on by noting that people who got warned about La Llorona, at least in my experience, anecdata, were only women, girls, teenage girls.
Oh, it didn't even occur to me that boys would be warned.
Yeah,
Isn't
exactly.
that messed up?
I wanted to make that clear to like anyone who might be listening who's like, oh, well, it was all children, right? Because the thing is like the children that she kills are usually like, they're like sons usually, or they're twins. Right, but only women get warned about La Llorona?
Well, because those are like the quote unquote valuable children, probably. Like those are, if you want to like maximize the tragedy, that probably is a detail you add.
Right. The younger the children, the more likely it was that everyone got warned. Right? So when I was in middle school, everyone was talking about how like their moms, always their moms.
It's always the moms.
It's always the moms. We're like, oh, don't walk around this street at night. La Llorona's out there and she's going to take you. Not she might take you. She is going to.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's somehow just so much worse. You're like, Mom, come on.
Come
well,
on.
obviously.
And then as I got older, it became more the women that were receiving these warnings.
And in my head, my instinct is, it reminds me of when parents will tell you about like having safe sex and like watching out for like, you know, dark street corners and stuff like that. They're not warning the boys, they're warning the women.
Yep. It's just more of that. It's more of that.
Yeah, because the world happens at you.
Yeah.
And, you know, rightly, you have to be like, I understand why you have to like guard yourself against stuff that does happen to women, disproportionately women of color, disproportionately Indigenous women every day. And yet, you know, only focusing on the like measures we can take to kind of mitigate the tragedy that's like apparently ultimately coming our way. Like that is fucked up too, because there are things we need to change, and focusing on the perpetrators of violence and not the people who are like inevitably there to receive it, unless they're like on a different street at night.
The phrase "the world happens at you" is a fantastic phrase, Amanda. Great job.
Thank you.
Yep. I agree. That's definitely been my experience. And also when we're talking about La Llorona in particular in Puerto Rico, because I don't have any personal experience with it anywhere else, really. The changes in the story, to no one's surprise, have coincided pretty heavily with changes in government.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when people who were in power, who were pro-statehood, around the time that the story about the automobile accident happened.
Wow.
And then the people who were in power, who were pro-status quo, so staying the way we are right now, other one about the Indigenous woman was prevalent, I should say.
In the words of John Mulaney, we don't have time to unpack all of that. Yep. But do you have some ideas of like why that is?
Only vaguely half-formed ones. Like at some point, I wonder if I'm just like finding connections where there aren't any.
Hey, that's what this show is all about. Please.
Yeah. Welcome. I'm glad you got the email.
But I think part of it might be because a lot of mythology is used to refocus on different parts of your culture. And if you're trying to become a state, you don't want to focus on the bits that mean that you aren't a state. Having the focusing on the tragedies of an Indigenous population.
Gotcha. So making it
like
more nationalist and more globalized.
Exactly.
Yeah, like ever upward, eyes forward. Let's focus on the now.
Yeah.
Oof.
And so you end up, the myth that ends up being prevalent is the one that is, you know, modern and doesn't have as much colonizer baggage associated with it, because that's not what you want people to think about.
I really hope there's a band named Colonizer Baggage.
There is now. It's our new girl punk name.
Yeah.
I'm actually interested that kind of in my head, and this might be like a big leap, but it kind of reminds me of the Cultural Revolution in China, and how like the change in leadership kind of dictated what stories were prominent and how those stories are being told. Just basically the idea that like the Cultural Revolution was, hey, we are going to be new and globalize and modernize. And so the way that we tell our stories, our cultural stories, are more important that we kind of tell them in the presence of the now rather than in the like confines of the past.
Yeah. And like Ellie said, the colonizer baggage, you know, makes this seem different than the nationhood, than the whole. Yeah. So that totally checks out in my mind. Yeah. I am not a cultural anthropologist or folklorist who can talk to this, but in my layperson opinion, love it.
Yeah, and I suppose there needs to be like an added note here, like star footnote
addendum, to
remember that the story about the woman who dies in the automobile accident is associated very heavily with the people who are faking it.
Right. Yep.
It's the same story. So I have no idea if they made up that story and managed to like spread it around, or if it came from somewhere else. That's a complete mystery to me.
But it's still a story that someone found significant and timely to bring up now, and that had an impact on people around it. And the way that people interpreted it still has like significance.
Right. And we see that in our urban legends episodes when we talk about those. We see a lot of stories that have kind of adapted over time for each different generation. So kind of adding different parts and different aspects to it that kind of become important to the generation that is telling it is how these stories kind of stay in the consciousness of the society.
I'm literally just thinking about growing up and interacting with these kinds of urban legends, which was especially interesting for me because my parents are both atheists and skeptics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't actually grow up with this in my household, except as like them being like, oh, someone's spreading this story around again.
Now, see, I don't want to get too far from the point of the episode, but I'm curious as to like what kind of other urban legends you grew up with in Puerto Rico.
Everyone's gonna facepalm all at once. La Chupacabra.
Yes, excellent. No face palms, only excellence.
That was a big one where I was from. So I lived in Mayagüez. Mayagüez is a western town. It's at the time the second most populated town after San Juan.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty heavily industrialized with some large areas of campo, I guess like country.
Okay.
Parts. And so I grew up in the mountains. Like I grew up in the middle of nowhere.
Ah, where folklore flourishes.
The best.
Accurate. La Chupacabra and La Llorona were honestly the two main ones that we had in Mayagüez. There were some stories about like other types of ghosts over bridges.
Man, people love bridge ghosts.
People
just those
do love a
liminal
good bridge
spaces.
ghost.
There was supposedly a ghost on the bridge at the bottom of my mountain that you had to like go over to get up.
Were there any like practices you had to do, like raise your feet over the bridge or something else like that?
No. It was
just
there.
hanging out.
Just
out.
there.
We don't know what her
so you
deal
know.
was, but
There was no gender. There was no story. It just hung out being a ghost as far as I know.
Cool.
I mean,
Sounds
that's
pretty chill.
That's my ghost dreams. Just hanging out.
That's how I
just doing
feel.
whatever.
Like if there are mice in my building, as long as I never see them, I'm fine with that. Like I can cohabitate with other species as long as they just never make their presence known to me. That's fine.
Yeah, pretty much. If you want creepy stuff, this is one from where I was looking it up because it's from, again, Lajas. Something's up with Lajas. I don't know.
Something's up.
I didn't live
It's a
there.
hotbed of paranormal activity, and we're into it.
And it's called Los Desmembrados, which means the
Ooh.
dismembered.
I could have guessed that. I've never taken any Spanish. I could have guessed that.
So it's supposedly that people in Lajas have witnessed incomplete bodies wandering around the 116
Whoa.
road.
I have a
Yeah.
question. And it is, what part of it is incomplete?
Torsos without limbs, bodies from the waist down, things
All
like
right.
that.
Cool.
Whoa.
And supposedly they're like the bits of bodies left over after car accidents and stuff.
Oof. That is
Very morbid.
dark.
I
very
should
striking.
note also that PR has a lot of car accidents. It's like really dangerous to drive in on the island. So I'm not surprised there's this much association with car accidents, actually.
But that is so interesting. You've created your own spirit and cryptid based on something that is one like pretty new to the the island, all things considered, like historically, and you've created something that is like wholly unique, which is really, really interesting. I love.
Yeah, I've never heard of that
the
before.
creation of folklore so much.
Yeah, bits of bodies.
I mean, like not like the most like wonderful thing. It's not like, oh, we have this mermaid that is unique. It's like, nope, they're bits of bodies, but still
That's
very
bodies walking
cool.
But I also love the description of them as incomplete.
Yeah.
Like it's very charming and I love it a lot.
I was actually going to bring this back to the thing that started the episode, which was this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I
Please.
watched the trailer.
Oh boy, please tell us.
What's happening?
Don't know.
What?
Don't know.
Why is she white?
Why is she white though?
Why is she white though? Like,
Listen, I love Linda Cardellini. She was a fantastic Velma in the Scooby-Doo series, but she doesn't have to be in this movie. There's no reason. There's no purpose whatsoever.
no reason. There's plenty of like Latin American. If you don't want to get specific, there's plenty of Mexican actresses out there who can make this happen. Like, even if you don't want to, find someone who is Mexican. There's plenty of Mexican American actresses out there too. Like
That is true.
It's like a weird way to phrase that, but like from Mexico, like currently living there.
So for context for our listeners, it's part of the Conjuring series, which is based off of the like investigations of the Warrens, who you might know from the Amityville horror house and the creepy doll, whatever the hell its name is. So it's based off of that guy's series of books and the Warrens' investigations. I don't think the Warrens have anything to do with this. I hope not, because they're a bunch of white people. Again, don't need any more of those. We're good, thanks. But yeah, I think Linda Cardellini is supposed to be like a American social worker or something.
Yeah, it takes place in Los Angeles.
I mean, there is a strong Mexican and Latinx population in Los Angeles, so that makes some sense, but not just.
But like, there are so much more interesting possibilities to bring to the table in terms of like migration, the ongoing, failures of the state for people of color, especially Mexican Americans. Like there's lots of ways that you can make a really interesting movie in 2018 about La Llorona, and I don't think this is one of them.
I agree. I found an article in Remezcla, and
I know it's good because you started.
I'm sorry,
laughing.
I'm just reading the sentence, and I'm trying to say it with a straight face, but I can't. As Twitter users, we're quick to ask, where are then all the Mexicans?
That's a great question. Thank you, Twitter users. All right, I have a question for you, Ellie. If you were to make a La Llorona movie, what would it look like?
Or audio drama.
Or audio drama, because we know you love audio drama.
It's true, I do. If I were making it, I would set it in Puerto Rico because I want to work within my realm of experience for this.
Sure.
Like I said throughout the episode, there's a lot of variations on the myth depending on where you are and who you are. And some of those are like intricately tied with things that I have no experience with, like being Catholic.
It's fair. It's a very weird experience. Speaking as one.
Also, I'm so sorry. Can we revisit the theology of that at the pearly gates thing? Like, Catholic tradition holds that baptized babies go to heaven, and if these children were baptized Catholic, as they likely were, if the Spanish Catholic colonizer was involved, then there it would be on the mom to go find them.
Go
the
find
souls
the
would
souls
be
of
in
your
heaven
baby.
already.
Yeah, no.
Come on, St. Peter, you're drunk.
Or
Drunk
Get
on
your
that.
shit together.
Drunk on that communion wine.
the only way that this ever made any sense to me was that St. Peter didn't want an indigenous woman there.
I mean, probably true, but then
Probably
just
a call
like
out to St. Peter. Let's be real here.
be outright discriminatory, as so many of you and your clergy are, and just send her away. Like there's a system for that, and it's called hell via purgatory. And I don't get the additional like salting the wound of freaking like denying her and sending her on a never-ending quest of sorrow and haunting.
I think it's supposed to be one of those like weird morals that are terrible.
Also,
don't kill your
don't
kids,
know.
you won't get
My
into heaven.
question
I don't
is-
know.
Yeah, my question is, how did a woman who, in a fit of quote-unquote madness, kill her children and then get to heaven, get to those pearly gates? And St. Peter was like, yeah, you can come in, you just gotta find your kids.
I don't know. All of these stories seem to start with step 1, don't get colonized. And like, frankly, that is not their fault.
Yeah, pretty much. Not wrong.
Anyway, back to your movie/audio drama.
In Puerto Rico, and needless to say, I would be casting Puerto Ricans.
Whoa.
That is a wild
Revolutionary.
concept.
I know.
Whoa.
It's like shocking. Stunning, I know. I don't want it to be a horror. La Llorona it's a freaking ghost story, right? Like, obviously it's meant to scare people. Like, that's what it's designed to do. What people it's supposed to scare and how they're supposed to scare them is, varies. But I don't want it to associate this continuous, all of these issues that we've pointed out with the way that it's treating Indigenous women in particular back into, like, what I do. So what I want is that I want to subvert that somehow. I would want to have it be, like, maybe the story of La Llorona is seen and witnessed at the beginning in its traditional real world form, but then someone has an experience with La Llorona that subverts that. And we can talk about the effect of colonization and the effect of patriarchy on how women are portrayed in urban legends.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I would want to do with it.
So maybe not a movie. Maybe we're thinking like Netflix miniseries with like 8 to 12 episodes.
Very good. High budget. I mean, and I think that's a really useful example to point out that, like, I don't know, I don't criticize and point out things like, why is a white lady a protagonist of a movie about La Llorona, just to point a finger, but to say, like, this is a useful opportunity for us to ask ourselves as individuals and as a society why we tell the stories the way we do, the importance of how we frame those stories, which ones we choose to retell, and with what actors in this case. Like, it's not, you know, I feel I don't want to seem as if we're just pointing something out that is annoying for the sake of saying, oh, that's annoying. But like, this is how we learn, and stories are how we determine and perpetuate and shift our values. And there is nothing more important than looking critically at the ones that we hold up. Ellie, are there any stories, movies, books, audio dramas, etc., that you feel are fascinating, representative, or otherwise like worth talking about and recommending instead of this dumb movie? Where should people spend money to support Puerto Rican artists and Latin American artists?
I do have all of those things. In fact, I'm going to start with Timestorm, which is created by Cocotazo Media, which is a audio and music artists collective of Puerto Ricans and Latin Americans, but specifically Puerto Rican people. They also have a variety podcast called Cocotazo Theater. That's Cocotazo, for people who can't understand my very fast Spanish. But Timestorm is their brand new podcast. It's a young adult podcast about these twins who are Puerto Ricans living in New Jersey, who have the opportunity to travel back in time to preserve and record and observe history.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Julia's making big, wide, I want it eyes at the camera.
Like, that's so up my alley. It's not even funny.
Yeah, they're doing that, and it's very important to note that they're not there to change history. They can't. It's like in the rules. They're there to observe history, especially history that has been tainted by white supremacy and colonizer narratives.
Oh, Ellie. I know. All of that, so good.
I know.
I love it so much.
It's really nice. I mean, it's really wonderfully done from what I've heard so far, and I highly recommend that you check it out if you want young adult time travel adventures where they're trying to keep that a secret in their real life, so you also like have the experience of them like living their lives. And it deals very heavily with Hurricane Maria. Because that had as you can expect, had a huge effect on the way that Puerto Ricans are creating art right now. And so there's a lot of that as well. And I think it's really important that we support those artists. So I highly recommend that you check out Timestorm.
Yeah. And they have albums for purchase and merchandise for purchase, as well as, I think, a donation button. So you can put your money where your enjoyment is for cocotazomedia.com.
We will link it in the show notes.
Yay! Flyest Fables.
Yes.
I love this podcast so much. I'm so glad you agree with me, Julia.
You're just making these recommendations. I'm like, Ellie, just like sit next to me and tell me like stuff I need to listen to for the next like 20 years. Okay, good.
For those that don't know, Flyest Fables is it's a connected anthology of sorts about this that starts with this kid, this child, who finds a magic book that has his name on the cover, and he gets to experience these fantasy adventures while he's dealing with bullying in school and things like that. And it's super empowering audio, because this has been constructed specifically to showcase like Black children. The creator is Morgan Givens. Morgan Givens is amazing. He voices all of the characters differently. His vocal range is truly astonishing. He also writes and sings songs, like original music for each that like ties into the story. And there's immersive sound design. This is an extremely well constructed podcast. It's really wonderful. It is also like the definition of hope punk for me, which is this
yes,
popular new category that we have floating around, because it's radically kind, it's empathetic, it's empowering, it's positive, and I just really recommend that everybody check it out. So that's Flyest Fables.
And most importantly, please check out ElenaFernandez-Collins.com, where you can subscribe to one of my favorite newsletters about podcasting and follow all her excellent takes and reviews and super, super smart blog posts. I'm so lucky to be working in an industry where Elena is a journalist, genuinely, and everybody should know your name and follow you on Twitter.
It's 100% true. Elena does amazing work. And I will, again, link in the show notes her website.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for being on the show. We're so glad you were able to come and talk about La Llorona with us.
Thank you for having me. It was super fun.
It was absolutely, and I say this with 100% honesty, our absolute pleasure. All right. Remember, listeners, to stay creepy.
Stay cool. Thanks again to our sponsors. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can learn or teach just about anything. Skillshare.com/spirits2 will get you 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free. And Zola. To start your free wedding website and get $50 off your registry, go to zola.com/spirits. Spirits was created by Amanda McLaughlin, Julia Shafini, and Eric Schneider, with music by Kevin MacLeod and visual design by Allison Wakeman.
Keep up with all things creepy and cool by following us at Spirits Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. We also have all of our episode transcripts, guest appearances, and merch on our website, as well as a form to send us your urban legends at spiritspodcast.com.
Join our member community on Patreon, patreon.com/spiritspodcast, for all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff. Just $1 gets you access to audio extras with so much more available too. Recipe cards, director's commentaries, exclusive merch, and real physical gifts.
We are a founding member of Multitude, a collective of independent audio professionals. If you like Spirits, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
And above all else, if you liked what you heard today, please share us with your friends. That is the very best way to help us keep on growing.
Thank you so much for listening. Till next time.